What's up, guys, and welcome back to day 4063 of quarantine. Last night, I counted just how many pumps it takes to empty a soap bottle. That's what this world has come to. Anyway, we're back, and I'm excited today because we're going to go over the do's and don'ts of an interview. Speaking of which, I spent about 45 minutes thinking of the correct way to put the apostrophe on don'ts. Does it go after the T? Does it go before the T? If it goes before the T, then you have two letters after an apostrophe, and I literally don't think that's legal. I don't know. I don't have anyone here supervising me, and this is when we start to break down. The wheels are flying off this cart, nobody's steering, and I'm trying to use apostrophes. At this point, you just got to ask yourself one question. Do you feel lucky? Whatever the answer is, leave it in the comments. Back to business. Today, we're going to be going over some things that are absolutely crucial that you want to do during an interview, as well as some things that you should avoid at all costs. Plus, if you stayed at the very end of this 2.5-hour video, there's an announcement that you'll want to hear. Just kidding. This is not going to be 2.5 hours, but there is going to be a surprise, so stay tuned. Okay, let's kick this thing off. You know what time it is. It's time for the dad joke of the day. Wait, what? That's not right. Who wrote that? It's time for the joke of the day. Let's do this. A drum roll, please. Suspense, building, tension, harness, Michael Bay, and stop. Did you hear about the camera operator that had to give up his career? Yeah, craziest thing. He kept losing his focus. Boom. I mean, if that isn't a dad photographer filmmaker joke, I don't know what is. You know what? I'm sure everybody's sleep schedule is thrown off now. Mine is really off, so I spend about 3 hours a night staring at my ceiling trying to come up with these jokes. I just hope you appreciate them. Anyway, so we've gone over editing. We've had a few episodes of the Real Cinema Experience. We've even started diving into composition, but if you missed any of those, there actually is some great content in there, so please head on over to the Springfield Public Schools YouTube channel, find the AMI Video Productions playlist, and all of the content is right there at your disposal. Now, don't quote me on this, but I heard from a source, an anonymous source, a mysteriously anonymous source, that if you watch all 13 videos in a row without blinking, a genie pops up out of your screen and grants you 2 wishes. Why 2 wishes? Because 3 would be ridiculous. All right, let's move forward and get down to business with the do's and don'ts while conducting an interview. Okay, so some of the shots that we're going to see today will be repeating shots from the last week. That's just to add emphasis because it is important. But a lot of what you see today will be first-time shots. So let's get started. The first one, obviously, we always want to try and put our tripod at eye level. But here's an example of not doing that. So here is what we call a high angle shot. The tripod has been placed over the subject's eyes. And what this does is it causes, number one, it's unflattering to the viewer. Number two, it tends to make people look inferior or innocent or small. This was a lot closer, but if you were to do an extreme and pull back and do a wider shot, I would look really, really small. I mean, I'm 6'6", 275 pounds. So I'm no small guy, but if I were to put the camera above and look down, you're going to create these really small shots, or the feeling of them being really small. Now, you can use this to your advantage. For instance, the Master of Horror, if you don't know who the Master of Horror is, you need to do some research, but the Master of Horror is Alfred Hitchcock. And Alfred Hitchcock really pioneered techniques in the way we see things and perceive them. Now, he did these horrifying films. People were terrified of him. But if you actually met him in real life, he was a very small, frail man. In fact, part of every interview that he did, every single interview that he ever did, he always demanded that the tripod and camera be placed above his eyes. So he was always shot at a high angle. So it made him look very innocent and very small. But in reality, he was this terrifying guy. So you could use these, but the big thing is make sure that you're always putting the tripod and camera at eye level. That way, you don't have this weird eye line where you're looking up. We'll see an extreme later where I'm sitting down and you'll see a weird eye line. But that is a high angle. Now let's take the reverse. So this is the exact opposite. This is a low angle shot. Now, a low angle shot causes the exact opposite effect. Unflattering again. It tends to make people look huge. Now, again, you can use this to your advantage. For instance, if you did not know this, Rocky Balboa, Sylvester Stallone, is a very small guy. I want to say he's like 5'5" or 5'6". You would never know that. So he did all these Rocky movies, and what they did was they shot on wide lenses and they shot very low angles. So he looks immense. He's got a lot of muscle, which he actually does have a lot of muscle, but he looks bigger than real life because in the camera you can start tricking the eye by creating and distorting human features. A low angle is one way to do that. You look a lot bigger than you really are with a low angle. How could this be a problem? Well, if you're let's say dealing with somebody that is very overweight, now they're extremely overweight if you're shooting low angles. Another example is Tom Cruise. I bet you guys did not know this. Tom Cruise, I think, is 5'7", right? but he looks like normal height in all of his movies. How do they do that? Well, number one, by the way, Tom Cruise is listening to this, so I'm sorry for spoiling your secrets, Tom. But number one, what they do is they shoot low angles. So again, he looks much larger than in real life. Number two, set design. You guys probably don't know this, but set design is a crucial feature and it allows for tricking people into believing something. So what they did, a normal door height, and I hate for somebody that's into construction to actually listen to this because it's probably actually slightly wrong, but a normal door height, I believe, is 6'7". Tom Cruise is 5'7". So what do they do when they're building sets? They build it 1 foot smaller. So now when he walks through a door, he looks huge, right? Another problem we had, it's like I've worked with Tom Cruise, but another problem they have is that Tom Cruise is typically shorter than actresses. So his female co-stars that he has to kiss on screen are typically taller. That does not look pleasing, does not look macho. So what they do is they have him stand on a box for those kissing scenes, so he is actually the same height as them. So there's lots of ways to trick this. There's lots of ways to use this technique, but for interview purposes, it's not very good practice. It's unflattering, makes you look bigger than you really are. It also can create the double chins because you're going to be looking down, so you don't want the double chin. So the biggest thing to take away from these first two, always put the camera and the tripod at eye level. Whatever you have to do, if you have to raise it up, if you have to lower it, make sure the camera is at eye level. All right, moving on. We've already seen this one, but we're going to look at it again. So this is an example of when you shoot somebody directly on a wall. Super flat. It's very boring. I call it lazy because students typically do this when they first start out. They're like, can we interview you? Here, stand against this wall. You're going to have them naturally want to lean up against the wall. There's no pleasing background. There's no depth. It's not interesting. Look at the shadow it's creating. It's just a mess. So make sure that you're trying to create some type of background like this. So this has got some background into it. You can see there's some depth. It's very appealing. This is a flattering image, more pleasing, interesting subject matter, adds production value. So I would always encourage you to add some type of background. Say cow, see cow. If they are talking about, if the story is about a baseball player, they should probably be interviewed at a baseball field. If the story is about a basketball player, they should probably be interviewed on a basketball court. If the story is about a murderer, interview them in jail because that's where they're going. I know, I'm reusing jokes. That's because I'm running out of content. All right. So this is another one, eye line. This is a perfect example. Make sure the tripod is on eye level. Make sure you're standing at eye level. If you're sitting while the interview is standing, look at the eye line. You can see that I'm clearly looking down. Again, it's going to create the double chins. It's not flattering, right? So here is the correct way to do it. So now the person is standing up. The eye line is correct. It's a lot more pleasing. So this is what I would encourage you to always do. Make sure that the camera and you are on the correct level as the interviewee. Okay? Next shot, we have, I gotta fix my tie. By the way, that is called an Eldridge knot. An Eldridge knot. It's for the very highly sophisticated. It's 15 different steps to tie that tie. And I hope you guys appreciate it. All right, moving on. Next one. So here is again, this is me looking up. You can see how unflattering it is. Make sure you're on the same level. It's so important to make sure you're on the same level. If they're standing, you're standing. If they're sitting, you're sitting. If they're standing, the tripod and camera are on the same level. If they're sitting, the tripod and camera are on the same level. So that way we have a great looking shot. Now you can see the eye line has been fixed. You get a better idea of what that Eldridge knot looks like. Very sophisticated. Somebody told me that I should be wearing a fedora. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I could definitely pull off a fedora. No doubt about it. All right, let's move forward into one of my bigger pet peeves, I'd say this is number 2, not my biggest, but number 2. Do not shoot in front of a window. This is what happens when you shoot in front of a window. You can't expose. It's impossible. If you try and expose for the talent, the background's blown out, right? If you try and expose for the background, you can see what happens is a silhouette. Again, if you're trying to do a witness protection interview where you don't actually want to see them, this is it. This is how you do it. Expose for the background, you get a silhouette, you'll never know who's speaking. Mystical, right? But if you're trying to, let's play it again. If you're trying to expose for the person, it's going to look like they're sitting in heaven, right? Very distracting. You don't want to do this. Do not try to. Now, I said it's impossible. I'm going to backtrack and correct myself. Some cameras, not all, if you have like a $30,000, $40,000 camera, you can do both. It'll allow you to do both. They're designed to do that. But for most people, we don't. So do not shoot in front of windows because that's what's going to happen. Let's take a look at take 2 here. So again, windows blown out, but the subject is correctly exposed. So what we're going to try and do is, you'll see the difference here. We're exposing for the background now. We become silhouetted. So we're going to try and compensate now. What if we just used the light? You could light them up. Well, let's turn on a light and see what happens. There's with the light on, and you can see barely exposed. So what you have to do is you have to bring in the light so close. Watch what happens. We bring it in, and it's literally inches from my face. Very unpleasant. Harsh, contrasty. You could get away with it, I guess, but let me just tell you from experience, that light was about 12 inches from my face. Very difficult to see. You can see me squinting. It's very uncomfortable. So again, just avoid shooting into a window. That's the worst thing to do, okay? Now, what you could do is use the window to your advantage. So let's turn that around. So if you turn them around, now you can use the window with the light coming through it to illuminate your subject. I always encourage this. Typically, if it's coming through a window, it's going to be a little bit softer, so it looks nicer. So you could use window light to your advantage. Door shut. Boom. So you could use this to your advantage. Always try and get the nicest looking light. When I do interviews, I might stand them next to a window. I won't shoot into the window, but I might stand them next to a window to try and get that exposure. Okay? Alternative. Here is without any type of lighting. You can see that it is pretty flat. There's not a whole lot of depth. Everything's exposed evenly. You kind of blend into the background. And there you go. Light has been added. And you can see a significant difference. So let's back that up just a little bit. Here's without light and with light. You can see a tremendous difference. Now, I see this shadow in the background. We could have probably fixed that if I really spent time doing it, but I just wanted to show you the difference between no light, very flat. You can see that like my hair is starting to blend into that brown wall in the background. Nothing really stands out other than that TV in the background. And then turn it on. Now you've got a little bit more depth. The subject matter pops. So I always encourage you to use some type of video light. It's real easy. You just throw it on there. Now, you can use this outside if you have a super bright light. Definitely during nighttime shots, I would use this for interviewing. I would use this at all times inside. Even if you think the subject is properly lit, just throw on the light and see. See if it adds any. If it does, use it. If it doesn't, just turn it off. It's a real simple setup. On-camera lights are very beneficial. I always encourage it. Okay? All right. Moving on to my biggest pet peeve. Biggest pet peeve is this. Oh, it hurts me to look at. Do not mic somebody like this. I think this is pure laziness. I know that if you've ever been interviewed by the news, they do this, and I'm trying to break that habit. But in my mind, I hate that freeze frame. Let's not freeze on that. Let's find a more flattering shot. There we go, whatever. All right, in my mind, when I'm watching this, the only thing I see is the mic. It's a distraction. You want people to focus on what you're saying. If you mic somebody like this, number one, all I see is the mic and the wire hanging on the clothing. So I hate this. Number two, they're holding the transmitter, and typically people talk with their hands. So watch what happens. Let's back it up just a little bit so you can see. Typically people talk with their hands, and this is what's going to happen. So when they start talking with their hands, the cable's going to be flying around, they're holding the mic pack. It's even more of a distraction. So again, I think this is a horrible technique. Do not mic on top of clothing. I don't care if you're in a rush, take the time to do it properly. I know that there's probably news stations that are freaking out right now, and I'm sorry, I absolutely hate it. Do not mic on top of clothing. Biggest pet peeve, do not mic on top of clothing. Let's take a look at the correct way. So here you go. The mic is hidden. You can actually see the clip, but that's okay. The mic has been hidden. I'm free to talk with my hands. The cable's not slinging around. This looks proper. It looks like you took time to actually mic somebody. You care about the project. It looks a lot better. It's cleaner. It's neat. This is definitely what you want to go with. Do not mic on top of clothing. Make sure you're hiding the wire. All right. I do not have an example of this, but I do not have an example of this, but it's pretty simple. The biggest conversational killer is what we call a bipolar question. So a bipolar question is a question that has only one of two possible answers. And the biggest bipolar question there is yes or no. Do not ask yes or no questions. Now, let me back up. You can ask yes or no questions for clarification, but if you're expecting an answer and sound bites from it, do not ask yes or no questions. This is a bipolar question. It's a conversational killer. So let's say you're asking a question, do you believe that the coronavirus is going to end by May 4th? Yes. Right? So it just killed your conversation. Do you believe that we should lift restrictions by May 4th? No. It kills your conversation, right? So your people are just going to stop thinking. Do not ask bipolar questions. Now, you could ask a bipolar question with a closed off question to kind of reiterate the answer. So you could say something like, do you believe that the restrictions on the coronavirus should be lifted by May 4th? If so, why or why not? Do you believe restrictions should be lifted? And what are some ways to lift those restrictions and ease back in, right? So do not ask bipolar questions. Don't just ask yes or no. It's going to kill your interview, the worst habit to do. So make sure that you're not asking bipolar questions. Next, we definitely want to say and spell first and last name. The very first thing that you should do when you set up a tripod, you press record, they're mic'd up, you ask them to say and spell their first and last name. It's Travis Sherman, Travis Sherman, and I am the Harbor High School television productions teacher. Okay, so why is that important? Number one, while they're doing that, you should be adjusting your audio. That way you don't have them go, check 1 2, check 1 2, mic chest, mic. Because here's what happens. Typically, when you ask somebody to do a mic check, they're going to talk like this. Check 1 2, check. Right? They're not actually speaking at their normal level. So when you actually start recording, you've adjusted their level really high. They start talking normal, and now your audio is blasted. So, number one, while they're saying and spelling the first and last name, you should be adjusting your audio levels. Number two, say and spell their first and last name. I had a student, I will never forget him. His name was Hertsong Tong Kong Song Fu, right? If I said, go interview Hertsong Tong Kong Song Fu, you would have no idea how to say that name, right? I guarantee you don't know how to spell it. I don't even know how to spell it anymore. But if you have him say the name on camera, now you have a better idea, right? He may even say, call me Hurt, right? Hertsong Tong Kong Song Fu, call me Hurt. So you can address them properly. Number three, you now have the available information for your lower thirds, and that's important. How to say and spell their first and last name. so you can have that for your lower thirds when you eventually use it. And then finally, their job title or their title of whatever, right? I said Harbor High School Television Productions, I think. So now you have their title. That's very important. If you go interview somebody, people want to know why are we listening to this person? What do they have to do with anything about this story? And so they want clarification of why this person is important. Okay? Last one. I think I said my number one pet peeve was mic on clothing. I'm leaving a number one. Number two I said was don't shoot through a window. I'm actually going to push that to number three. So here comes number two pet peeve. Do not talk over the interviewee. Do not do it. This is a terrible habit. When students are fresh out and they're just starting interviews, they may like say something in agreement while they're talking, like, yeah, sure, yep, you bet, right? It's impossible to edit. Keep in mind, this is your audio that you're going to be editing. So if you have somebody in the background talking over you, it's impossible to edit out. It also kills the mood. I typically tell students to practice the head nod and smile technique, right? And I've got it down to an art. What I do is I do 2 head nods. On the third one, I hold the head nod back for about 2 seconds and then smile and back to the head nods, right? So head nods, hold, smile like you understand what they're saying, head nods again, right? That lets them know that you're engaged in the conversation. It makes them feel a little bit more comfortable. What I'm about to show you has probably been one of the most frustrating things I've ever seen, right? Okay, so let me give you a little background on this. So we're about to see a bride from a wedding. Her fiance has written her a letter. She hasn't seen him in like 3 days or something. They're about to see each other for the very first time. She just put on this dress. They're about to get married. Emotions are very, very high. He has delivered a letter to her that I have requested her to read on camera. Okay? This originally was like a 7-minute clip. I've cut it down to 2 shots that were 27 seconds and one that's 40 seconds. Let's just take a look at what happens. I'm not going to talk. Let's just take a look. Whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Your face already.
Katie, when you are reading this, we will only be a few hours from getting married. Sorry. I hope you are not too nervous.
Well.
Or just a good type of nervous, as you like to call it. I'm so happy that you said yes on September 28th to letting me be in your life forever and getting the chance to be your husband. Your constant smile, jokes, laughter, and yes, even the dancing brings a lot of joy into my life. I cannot wait to spend my happily ever after with you from now till we are 84. I love you. P.S. Since we have been working on Spanish a bit, I hope this comes out right. Te amo más de lo que nunca sabrás.
Okay, so there you go. That was extremely frustrating. Every time I hear it, it just makes me cringe. So what happened was the photographer, and I'm putting the photographer on blast. I'm not going to say the name, but the photographer who was in the room, you could hear her clicking the photos. But number one, she had like a machine gun laugh. Number two, it was such an emotional moment, and it was ruined. How do you use that type of footage? So keep this in mind. When you're conducting an interview, do not be that person. Do not talk over the interviewee. Let that moment develop. Let her actually experience those emotions. Let her cry, right? That's where the drama comes in. So I hope you've learned a valuable, valuable lesson. And there you have it. That is going to complete our tutorial on the do's and don'ts of conducting an interview. If you learn nothing else, please, please, please take the time to properly mic somebody and do not talk over someone when you're conducting the interview. Now, I did say there was going to be a special announcement, so here it is. We have done 7 tutorials now and 2 real cinema experience videos, so I thought we would do something a little more fun next. So our next video is going to be over competitions. That's right, we're going to go behind the scenes with Arkansas Skills USA television video productions. Springdale Public Schools has won first place in this competition for 14 years. Wow. So we're going to get an honest inside look and my honest opinions. And when I say honest, I mean I may not be welcomed back into nice hotels anymore. Who knows? But frankly, dear, I don't give a damn. We will take a look at winning videos, break them down, what makes it successful, where does it need to improve, so hopefully it'll take your videos to the next level. Until we meet again, I'm Travis Sherman, and we'll see you next time.